What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my team selection for double game week 29. So I'm going to show you how the team is looking, thoughts on transfers, which feel very divisive this week. I'm probably going to take at least a -4, possibly a -8, and I've even considered a -12, although realistically, I'm probably not going to do that now, but I'll discuss it anyway. I'll also touch on captaincy, and before all that, let's quickly run you through how I did in game week 28. So I had 2 free transfers last week. One of them was Haaland to Watkins, which was always the plan because Haaland blanked in 28, only 1 fixture in game week 29. So I gained 2 extra fixtures for Watkins by making that move. But obviously Tony is getting closer and closer to a suspension. So the plan would be to do Tony to Haaland in game week 30 and just keep Watkins for a little bit longer. Tony at this point is only 1 yellow card away from a 2-game suspension. So it is a little bit of a worry for game week 29. But ultimately that is the plan. If we get to Friday's press conferences and Pep Guardiola puts doubts in our mind about whether Haaland will be fit for game week 29 or game week 30, then maybe the plans change a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But right now, that was the reason for doing Haaland to Watkins. The other move was Rico Henry to Chilwell, which didn't work out because Chilwell got a 1-pointer, conceded twice to Everton. I don't think many people saw that coming, and Rico Henry got 2 points. So if I could go back with hindsight, would I not make that move and have an extra transfer for game week 29? Of course I would, but I don't really regret making that move. Chilwell was the better option for game week 28. He's the better option for game week 29, so I'm happy to kind of have him moving forward. So overall, I scored 59 points, which was pretty good, but basically I was carried by Saka captain because Watkins came in and only got an assist against Bournemouth. I think Villa won 3-0, so a little bit frustrating he didn't get more than that. And obviously Kane got his goal and no bonus points. Everybody else blanked. I only had 10 players, but Saka got 18 points, and that is sometimes the luck that you need. Like, I don't think Saka and Kane were that much different in terms of captaincy. Most people actually went for Kane. The only reason I stuck with Saka is because I had the captaincy armband on him all week and he had the home fixture. That was about it. Obviously, if he had played 120 minutes in Europe before that game against Palace, maybe I wouldn't have gone for him, but I think he only played like 50 or 60, so I was fairly confident about his minutes. But like I said, you need a bit of luck. There's no way the difference in captaincy between Kane and Saka was 12 points, but that sometimes happens in FPL. So very happy. It was another green arrow. I haven't lost count of how many in a row it is. I just haven't gone and checked. I think it's like 5 or 6. So a bit of momentum still continuing to build. And obviously we're going into game week 29 where I'm going to bench boost. So hopefully we get another green arrow. Let's see how things are looking. So for game week 29, my bench boost is currently active. And the way I've set the team up is to put the players on the bench that would be there before I make any transfers. So I've got Raya, Kane, Odegaard and Gabriel. Now when I do make my transfers, it's likely that someone like Botman will be on the bench instead. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. You can see on the FPL screen that it's active. You've got this blue and white box around the bench. If I cancel it, that comes off. For what it's worth, slight side note, I feel like that's not great design. In previous seasons, the bench would go dark green. It was very obvious that the bench boost was active, but what do I know? Maybe that's enough. I'm not a graphic designer. Either way, it's there. It is one of the chips, unlike free hit and wildcard, that you can cancel. So if I got to the 29 deadline and I wasn't happy with the bench, I could cancel it. But the only reason I would even think about that is if we get a lot of injury news on the Friday press conferences. So if Eddie Howe says that Botman might miss the Man United game, if Ten Hag says that Rashford might miss the Newcastle game, it might be that I've got to make so many transfers for my first 11 that it's not worth worrying about the bench instead, and I might just bail on it and delay it until game week 34. But I've got every intention to play it this week because I don't want to have to wait until 34 where I'm thinking about transfers for my first 11, but my bench is affecting those moves. It's just not worthwhile. So I really want to get this chip done. So my intention is to play it this week. I'm not looking to make any defensive moves apart from possibly Gabriel out. So obviously Estupiñán's got a great double. Hopefully he'll be back in time to play that Brentford game. It'd be interesting to hear what De Zerbi says. But either way, I'm not going to sell him because Bournemouth's a decent fixture. Brighton have got so many more double game weeks to come. I don't really need to talk about Trippier too much either. I know Newcastle haven't kept as many clean sheets recently, but they have been a decent defence this season, so I'm hoping they can find a bit of that form, although not in the Man United game. And obviously he's still very attacking. Newcastle have got another double to come later on as well, so I'm going to hold on to him. And similar things with the kind of Chelsea players, right? 2 home games, can they get a clean sheet in at least one of them? I think it's possible. And obviously Chilwell's very attacking as well. There is I guess, some doubts about whether Chilwell will play both games, but he went away with England during the international break. He didn't play at all, I don't think, in the first game. He started the second game, didn't come away with any injury concerns that we know of. So I think there's been enough of a break since that game to the Villa game where he could play, and then they're probably not going to bench him for Liverpool. So I don't think game week 29 is an issue, but perhaps before the Champions League games he might get a little bit of a rest or rotated, etc. But I think for 29 he looks great. So the only defensive move I'm thinking of doing is Gabriel to Luke Shaw. Now I know a lot of people are not happy about selling Arsenal players to Man United players, and as I've said a lot of times now, if you're not happy about that, you definitely shouldn't do it. Part of the reason that I'm looking at doing it is because of future game weeks as well. So if we just take a quick look at Gabriel's fixtures, he's obviously only got a single game week this week, whereas Shaw has got Newcastle away and Brentford at home. Now, to be fair, I don't think either of those games are that easy to keep a clean sheet in, because Newcastle have got Isak, Brentford have obviously got Tony as well if he's not suspended for that game. So that is going to be difficult, especially without Casemiro. That is a big loss to Man United. But if Leeds can score in this game, then I'm going to be very happy that I made that move, even though you know how much I love Gabriel, very attacking, etc. Because I think Arsenal concede in game week 30. Whether they win the game doesn't really affect my decision. Will they concede? That's all I'm worried about, and I think they might. And in game week 32 I'm free hitting anyway, so keep that in mind. If you're not free hitting, your thoughts around Arsenal players will be a lot different, but I am going to free hit that week, so I can just get them back, and I'm definitely not worried about having him for Man City away. And in game week 34 Man United are going to double again, so this might be part of a hit. Will Luke Shaw score 4 more points than Gabriel in game week 29? Possibly not, but even if he doesn't, I don't think it would take too long to recoup those points. And if I'm going to make this transfer anyway, I would just rather do it in a double game week. So I am fairly sure I'm going to do Gabriel to Luke Shaw. I know there's some concerns later on. You know, as we get through the season, maybe top 4 gets secure and Man United might still be in the Europa League. Malacia could come in, but I still think from now until the end of the season, there's enough extra games for Man United where he'll get enough points to warrant the move. And like I said, I'd just rather do it in a double game week. And I am someone that likes to target double game week players as much as possible. And I feel like in a game where there's so much content now, and a lot of people think there's not, too many edges to be had because everyone's got all the information they need. When people are still unsure about getting double game week players because they're overrated, that just makes me want to get them more. So I am fairly sure I'm doing Gabriel to Luke Shaw. I keep saying Shaw, don't I? Either S-U-R-E or S-H-A-W. Either way, I'm probably going to do Gabriel to Luke Shaw. Am I 100% confident that that move will pay off this week? Absolutely not. And if you're worried about doing it, don't do it, right? But for my team, to get the extra double game week player, I'm almost certainly going to do it. And even if Botman is a doubt for Man United, I'm probably still going to bench boost with him. Either way, I'm not going to sell Botman, I don't think, because he's absolutely nailed when he's fit. And like I said, Newcastle got that extra double to come probably in game week 36. So I don't really want to use a transfer on him. The only consideration will be, do I delay the bench boost? But I think if he's only a doubt and not completely ruled out, I'll probably stick him on the bench and just bench boost anyway. All right, let's look at the midfield and we'll get the least controversial stuff out of the way first. So let's start with the Brighton midfielders, Mitoma and March. I'm not looking to sell either of them this week. Do I slightly regret not getting McAllister on my wild card? Because obviously he's playing really well in that number 10 position. First choice penalty taker, heavily involved, good underlying stats. I do regret it a little bit, but I don't think it's worth a -4 because Mitoma and March are good FPL options in their own right. And you could argue with the number of double game weeks Brighton have got before the end of the season, that -4 might repay itself. But after game week 29, they've got Spurs away, Chelsea away, and then a blank game week. So if I really want to make that move, I think I just reassess from game weeks 33 onwards, see if I've got a spare transfer, and if I don't, is it then worth a -4? Because after game week 33, they've still got 3 double game weeks to come. So it's not a move I want to make this week. With Rashford, a lot of what I do with him will depend on what Ten Hag says. I think in most cases, I'm definitely going to keep him because Man United's single game week fixtures after this are pretty good. They've also got 2 more double game weeks to come as well. So I don't want to get rid of him because he's such good value. The only way that would happen is if Ten Hag ruled him out for a number of weeks, and then maybe I would think about it. But even if he was a doubt for Newcastle, I would still keep him. I would just remove the captaincy armband. If Ten Hag says that he's fine, he's fit, and he's available for Newcastle, then he's almost certainly going to be my captain. Because I look at this team and think, who's got the most goal threat? It's really Rashford, Kane, and I've got Ivan Toney as well, but he's one yellow card away from a suspension, so I'm not going to captain him. And obviously Kane's not got a double game week, so Rashford is my man. I know that Man United didn't do that well against Southampton or Liverpool. I feel like that Liverpool game was very much an anomaly where everything just went wrong. And obviously Southampton, they were down to 10 men for a large part. And I don't think I want to forget how good Rashford has been this season, especially since the World Cup. And because of his better goal threat than, say, the Brighton midfielders, he's the one that I really want to captain this week. If there are any doubts about him starting against Newcastle, I will switch the armband because I don't think he's that much better. It's worth taking a risk when there's lots of other good double game week options, but he is my preferred choice. If you're going to turn around and say, I don't like Rashford, I want to go for Matoma or March or McAllister or Maddison, I would say absolutely you should go for that. They are all really good options, but for me, I think Rashford is the best choice. And I know that on paper, Brighton's fixtures are better, but both teams play Brentford at home. So then it's Newcastle away and Bournemouth away. And obviously Bournemouth is the better fixture, but Rashford is the better FPL option. And I know that I did the podcast yesterday with Az on FPL Black Box, and I predicted Brighton to score more goals. But I don't think that necessarily matters because you don't need a huge amount of goals to get a big score. And if Man United do score, you'd expect Rashford to be involved. So even though Newcastle away and Brentford at home aren't necessarily super easy fixtures, I think Man United score in both of those games. And the biggest goal threat is Rashford. Therefore, that is going to be my captain. Any doubts, I'm going to switch it to a Brighton player. It'll probably be Matoma, but I'll decide that closer to the time. Now let's get into the more interesting stuff, right? And I know everyone's going to hate this because I've seen all the comments this week already. I'm probably going to sell Saka this week to get Bruno Fernandes. Now, do I think that this -4 will definitely pay off in game week 29? No, I'm not that confident, but I'm happy that it will do sooner rather than later because of the difference in fixtures and the extra double game weeks that Man United have that Arsenal don't. And I am free hitting in game week 32. That is really important because if I get rid of 2 or even 3 of my Arsenal players before that, I can obviously bring them all back. If you're not free hitting, then you maybe should reconsider this move. It might not be quite as good for you. Now, some of you might have looked at this image and said, well, you've got 6.6 million in the bank. Why are you selling Saka instead of selling Odegaard? Because my original plan this week, when I wildcarded back in game week 26, was to do Odegaard to Fernandes and Gabriel to Luke Shaw, and I would have still had enough money to do Toney to Haaland. The difference is now what's gone, I wouldn't say wrong, but what's changed with that plan is I bought Chilwell for Henry in game week 28, so that has locked me out of doing that move and being able to have enough money to do Toney to Haaland. Now, I knew that when I bought Chilwell in. It's not like I brought him in and then suddenly realised after. I knew when I was making that move, there was a chance that I would have to sell Kane or Saka this week, but I was kind of okay with that. And you can reframe it a different way, that going forward, who do you prefer, Chilwell and Odegaard or Henry and Saka? I know because he just scored 18 points, a lot of people would say Saka and Rico Henry, but if he'd blanked against Palace, people would think differently. And I do think that is a big part of how people are viewing this move. Like, I think Saka is brilliant. I've said that for a long time. He's absolutely the best Arsenal option out of all positions. There's no doubt about that. He's first choice penalty taker, absolutely nailed on. His minutes are great. But I feel like for my team, this is going to be the best move because it's a move I'm going to eventually want to make anyway because the fixtures are getting more difficult. And don't get me wrong, if I had Saka in my team and enough money to sell Odegaard instead, I would absolutely do that because I'm not going into game week 30 with Saka worried that he's not going to do anything against Liverpool, because he probably will. West Ham's not a bad fixture either, but I think coupled with the free hit in 32, Liverpool away, West Ham away, Man City away and Chelsea at home, am I prepared to take a risk that Fernandes can score more? Absolutely I am. The only way I think this move changes is, one, I just bottle it, right, because I'm just really afraid of selling my Arsenal players, or we find out that Haaland is also a doubt for game week 30. Therefore, I wouldn't need the money to do Toney to Haaland. until later on, and obviously I could fix that when I sell Kane, like in game weeks 33 or 34, and I could just sell Odegaard instead of Saka. But either way, I'm going to sell one of them this week. And I said that, I think, last week, that one of them wouldn't survive game week 29. And I'm a big fan of not letting recent scores affect your decisions. And I think a lot of people are doing that with Saka right now. Because he scored 18 points, suddenly he's in form, he looks great. Well, last week when I was talking about him as a captain option, I'm not saying everyone said this, but lots of people were saying to me, do you know what, Saka's looking really tired. Arsenal, they've just played 120 minutes in Europe. Saka's really wide right now. He's got no goal threat and stuff like that. And that was based off a couple of blanks against Bournemouth and Fulham. Look what happens. He then goes and scores 18 points against Palace. Now he's at this really high level where you're crazy to even think about not owning him. So, like I said, it's very team dependent. If I had money in the bank to sell Odegaard instead, I wouldn't even be thinking of selling Saka, but I think it's best for my team because I'm going to want to make that move at some point moving forward. Like by game week 34, I'm going to want Fernandes, and Man United have, let's just look at their fixtures. They've got Everton at home, Nottingham Forest away. And like I said, I'm going to free hit this week anyway. So they've got slightly better fixtures. Even if Saka is a better option than Fernandes, if everything's equal fixture-wise, that's fine. But they're not, right? Man United have got the extra fixture and better fixtures afterwards. So if I don't take the hit this week to do those two moves, I'm still going to want to do it later on. But it's not going to feel as good to do it in a single game week. So that's basically why I'm doing it this week. Like I've said a lot of times, if you think Arsenal are going to smash Leeds like 6-0 and Saka's going to get a hat-trick or something like that, you should absolutely keep him. I'm not doing it and saying I'm not worried about it. I absolutely am. I'm just hoping that Odegaard can keep up to the point where it wasn't worth taking an additional hit, because that's basically what would happen. If I get rid of Odegaard this week instead of Saka, it leads to additional transfers and it just messes up the things I want to do over the next few weeks. The only other thing I'm thinking of, and I know this section's been very long, but I know a lot of people are thinking about this move as well. If we just come onto a transfer planner like FPL.team, the only other way to keep Saka and do the other moves I want to do, because I'm fairly locked in with getting Fernandes and Shaw, is to either just leave it at that and then in game week 30 decide how I get the funds to get Haaland back. So I could do Tony to Haaland and just downgrade Kane in game week 30 instead. I could just do Kane to Haaland. That would work as well. But if Haaland's fit and Tony gets suspended, that makes things a little bit of an issue for game week 30. That is another option though. The other one would just be to take the hit, an additional hit in 29, and get rid of Kane for a double game week player like Solanke. But if I do that, it's an extra -4 in game week 29. And it's just to keep Saka, let's go back to here, it's just to keep Saka for obviously 29, but also 30 and 31. I just don't know if it's worth that extra 4 points. And I get rid of Kane, who's got Bournemouth at home in game week 31. So realistically, this is the same plan as all along. Sell an Arsenal defender in 29, sell an Arsenal midfielder as well. The only difference is now I'm thinking about selling Saka instead of Odegaard. Is that bad? I feel like the way people are talking about it definitely is. But also, most of those people are being swayed by the 18-pointer. And a percentage of those people would have been saying that he looked tired the week before. So I don't know how much to worry about it. Let me know down in the comments below, because this is nearly at 10 minutes, this midfield section. Am I absolutely crazy for selling Saka? What would you do? And then up front, I've spoken about them enough already. It's Watkins and Tony alongside Harry Kane. Now, I think on paper, that Watkins double doesn't look that great. Chelsea away and Leicester away. But this is a Chelsea side that have just conceded twice to Everton. Leicester always seem to concede against absolutely everyone. So I think it's okay for Watkins. And part of the appeal about bringing him in was the Bournemouth at home game in 28 and Nottingham Forest at home in game week 30. They also play Fulham at home in 33. So there's no real rush to get rid of him if I don't want to. I think he's okay for this double. With Tony, he is one yellow card away from that 2-game suspension. So if he got the yellow card against Brighton, he would miss the Man United game. And I have thought about selling him, but I don't think there's enough really great options that are worth a -4. And if he doesn't get the yellow against Brighton, I will probably regret taking that hit. So I'm just going to keep him. And like I said, the intention would be to sell him to Haaland in game week 30. If Haaland misses that week and Tony's not suspended, I could just play him against Newcastle at home. If Haaland does miss game week 30 and Tony's suspended, I'll rethink then. I don't want to overthink every move for the future right now. Either way, Tony is staying. And so is Harry Kane. And it's not that I think Harry Kane is a better option than Saka this week. I think it just makes more sense for my team to remove Saka before I remove Harry Kane. The other transfer that I could do that some people might have already worked out is possible is to do Odegaard to Fernandes. And to fund that without selling Saka, I could sell Harry Kane instead. And by the way, ignore the captaincy. I don't ever change it on a transfer planner. And if you want to use this transfer planner, it's FPL.team. I could sell Kane instead. Now, I'd probably go to someone like Solanke or Mbeumo or Brennan Johnson if he's fit. Not because I think they're better than like Havertz, for example, for 29, but because they enable so much cash for future moves. And I don't want to have additional transfers made later on. So I'd probably go for someone like Solanke with 2 home fixtures, and that would let me get Fernandes. Then when I go into, and that would be for a -4, and then when I go into game week 30, I'd have more than enough money to get Haaland back in for Tony. The problem is I'd still have Gabriel instead of Shaw, and he's got Liverpool away. So would I hate having to play him that week? No, but it's not ideal. I'd also have Solanke instead of Harry Kane, and obviously I'd play one of my Brighton players instead. But if I don't do that move and I hold Harry Kane, I've got him for Brighton at home instead of Solanke for Leicester away. I've got Odegaard where Saka is, and I've got Luke Shaw who I can play instead of Botman. So although this move works, this Kane to a cheap forward and Odegaard to Fernandes, I don't think it works better long term. So ultimately, I guess what I'm trying to say, and I'm not trying to justify selling Saka. I really want to make it clear. He is brilliant. I just think for my team, it makes sense to sell him. There's loads of ways I can get around having to sell him, but I think they make my team worse, or they add additional transfers down the line. So just coming back to this team, this is how things look. As it stands, if Botman and Rashford are fine, I'm going to bench boost. I'm probably going to do Saka to Fernandes and Gabriel to Shaw for a -4, and then just hope for the best. It was the original plan all along to bring those two in. I'm just changing the midfielder I'm taking out, and I'll leave it there. I don't think I can talk about Arsenal players anymore. If you want to keep them, please keep them, right? That's absolutely what you should do. If you enjoyed that video, which is basically a lot of talk about Arsenal and some other stuff thrown in, give it a like. Hit subscribe. Let's hope the Man United players smash Arsenal in game week 29. And I'll catch you again tomorrow.